What's up everyone, welcome back to the LaceUp channel. My name's Mickey. In this video, I'm gonna give you the criteria that you need to use right now to select your vendors. Now I get a bunch of distributors coming to me saying, Mickey, my vendor's terrible, their pricing's terrible, they never fill my orders. Listen Johnny, I know that's the case with most of my distributors. They've got terrible vendors, but that's just because they didn't take the time at the initiation of the relationship to work through the list, the criteria that was necessary that you had to check off to approve that vendor and make them essentially a business partner for life. So in this video, I'm going to give you exactly what that criteria is, the questions that you need to ask, what you need to look at in order to select the best possible vendor for you. Anyways, let's get right into it. So there's 4 criteria that you need to look at when selecting a vendor. The first one is product criteria. Second one is market criteria. Third one is service and support, and the fourth one is financial criteria. So let's start with product criteria. When evaluating a vendor, you need to look at the vendor's portfolio. So what variety of product does the vendor offer? Do they have any minimum tiers to reach certain discounts in pricing? Can I mix and match the items to hit those tiers? Because normally with a vendor, when you drive up the size of your purchase order, normally you get economies of scale on the product which drive up your gross profit margins. So let me give you an example. Let's say that the vendor has a minimum order quantity of $10,000. Well, are you able to mix and match a portfolio of products to reach that 10,000 in order to get a price break? Or is the vendor going to force you to get one product only? And that's a good segue into competitiveness of the product. What types of product do they offer? Do they offer the same product as everyone else? Or do they offer a unique offering that drives a level of monopoly in your area? So let me give you an example. Does the vendor sell Coca-Cola? Or does the vendor sell a product, a health-inspired, new, nutritious product? I don't know what that product is, something imaginary. You can think of something in your heads. But do they sell something where perhaps you can sell that to your customers and generate a monopoly in your area? Is it possible? Right? Obviously with the Coca-Cola, everybody sells Coca-Cola and they sell it at competing prices. It's a commodity where it's a race down to zero. But when you look at something unique, something that hasn't been sold before, it's a double-edged sword, right? On one end, you get the opportunity of making asymmetric rewards on your risk. But on the other hand, you take the risk that consumers in your area won't necessarily purchase the product. So you need to check out the competition in addition to the portfolio. And then last but not least, and perhaps the most important aspect of the product is the price. Is your vendor offering you the product at a fair price? Well, you know how you determine this is quite simple. It's the same thing I do anytime I'm looking for a vendor. I contact 3 or 4 of them and I ask all 4 of them to give me the price. And I don't just look at who's got the lowest price, but I look at who combines the lowest price with the greatest opportunity for me, with the best support, with the best service, and then I pick my vendor. So you have to ensure that the price gives you a competitive advantage, not just in regards to the price, but in regards to service. And then you're looking for the vendor that's going to provide the most value to you. Who's going to give you the most value? Don't just focus on a dollar amount, focus on value. So anyways, guys, now that we've discussed all of the product criteria, let's move on to the market criteria. So before choosing a vendor, you have to understand the market that you're operating within. Does the market have recognition of your vendor's brand? That's simple, guys. Is there any brand recognition when you go put your product in your customers' displays? When the client walks across the shelf and sees the product, will they recognize what it is? Because if they don't, then your probability of breaking through a customer's inertia where they're just going in to buy a product is almost damn near impossible, which means that you're either going to have to beat the competition either on price, or you're going to have to go there and do samples, do promotions, do different things to incentivize the buyer to try your product. So what is the market recognition of your vendor's product? The next thing to ask your vendor is, what is your vendor's stability within the market? How many years have they been in business? Who else are they servicing right now? Can you have that person's phone number so you can give them a call and ask for a referral or a reference? Because look, most vendors, they talk a big game and their incentive is to sell you the first PO, the second PO, the third PO, but what happens when something goes wrong? What happens when the relationship spans 5 and 10 years, wherein we both know that everything that could go wrong will go wrong in that time period? Now, the ability for a vendor to remain a very good vendor over time for their customers is extremely difficult. So you're looking for stability in the marketplace. And in order to find out about that stability, ask for some references, call them up and ask them how they've been over the years. Now, last but not least, in the market segment, you want to find out if the vendor complies with all the regulations in your area. For instance, are you importing a vendor from a different country that sells a product that may not be approved here in your country? A product that could cause you some financial or governmental harm, right? Like, are you selling a medicine that needs to be FDA approved? Are you selling a health good that hasn't been verified by the government? What is it that the vendor's supplying you? And does that require any level of regulation? And if it does, have they gone through the process of getting everything approved and getting their ducks in a row in order to get you to sell their product? I can tell you unequivocally, I have a bunch of customers whose vendors sell them on the idea of a product that's going to make them millions. But when you turn around and go sell it, it causes you, the distributor, a lot of mental and emotional harm. When you go sell it and you realize that it's illegal to sell that product, right? It's a terrible position to be in. Just make sure that you have confidence that the vendor is compliant with all rules and regulations within your area. So the next thing you want to look at is service and support. Now, in terms of service and support, I'm not just talking about, will they answer your phone at 6 in the morning when you need them? No, that's irrelevant. When I talk about service and support, I'm talking about, does the vendor fill orders, right? Or do they constantly have their inventory back ordered, which means that you can't capitalize on lost sales? Think about that for a minute. You need to sell 1,000 of an item. You have the ability to go out to your customers and sell it, but your vendor isn't able to fill your 1,000 unit PO. That's a huge problem to be in. Not to mention, apart from just being able to service and fill POs, does the vendor offer you any level of exclusivity? Right? Do you have any product exclusively that you're able to distribute? Like, remember guys, the more you can generate a monopoly within this competitive environment that is distribution, the higher your gross profit margins. If you have to buy the product from the vendor and every other distributor buys the same product from the vendor, then honestly it's a race down to zero. You're just wasting your time. A vendor that's going to give you good service and good support is going to give you exclusivity at least over one product. And I think that's a good segment, or it's a good segue into the next point. If you get that exclusivity, you have to have some kind of aid to push that exclusive product into your market, because more than likely, you're not getting exclusive distribution on Coca-Cola. More than likely, you're getting exclusive distribution on a product no one knows, right? Which means when the customer walks into the store, as I mentioned before, and they see your product on the display and they see a product, a brand that they know, they're gonna go with the brand that they know 99% of the time. So you have to break the inertia of that customer going straight to that brand. Instead, you have to get aided by the vendor. So for instance, maybe you get special displays, maybe you get promotions where you can sell the product even cheaper. Maybe you get the ability to set up a little booth at the store and sample the product for free. Does a vendor provide any of these things to aid in your selling of the product, or are the sales all up to you? Like, we both know how difficult it is to get any product off the ground. Now imagine having to not only get the product off the ground, but introduce all of your customer base to it. Next thing you know, you're gonna blow through all your money, right? You're gonna end up spending way more than you anticipated, and then you're not gonna be successful. So make sure that the vendor's willing to aid you in your marketing efforts for the product. So thus far, we've talked about product criteria, we've talked about market criteria, we've talked about service and support. Last but not least, I want to talk about financial conditions. This is the most important aspect when evaluating a vendor. And here's where I think some of you seasoned distributors are really going to get the most value out of this business. Financial conditions entail, when you purchase from a vendor, what are their terms? Okay, and essentially is your flow? Are you having to use your cash flow to pay vendor bills? Or are you able to wait until you collect money from a customer in order to pay your vendor bills? That's a big distinction, because you don't want to be caught as a company that's constantly kicking the profits down the line. It's like kicking a can down the road. You don't want to be caught in that position. So let me give an example. Let's say that I buy from a vendor on net 90 days or net 60 days, to give you a better example. And now let's say that I turn around to my customers and I sell to a customer that pays me on net 30. Well, that's great, because here's what's going to happen. The customer is going to pay me, okay, and then I'm going to turn around and pay my vendor, and I'm going to have enough time to get paid by the customer and then pay the vendor. But what happens if that's inversed? What happens if the vendor gives you product, your product is due in 30 days, but then you turn around to the client and they are net 60? Well, now you've inversed the problem and you have to come out of pocket to pay for vendor bills. That's a huge problem because that means that you never make a profit because you're always turning over your net income to the vendor, right? So the timing at which the vendor financial cycle at which you pay a vendor and you get paid by customers is perhaps the most important thing in the world. You want to have customers that pay immediately, and you want to have vendors that are patient on your payment. This will make sure that you have the time to collect from your customers, pay the vendor, and then keep a profit and turn a profit for you and your business. Now, I hope this video was helpful in helping you lay out the criteria for selecting the right vendor. Now, I know most of these things are pretty straightforward and are common sense for you distributors that have been doing this for many years. But for those of you that are new to the game, okay, I want you guys to implement these strategies right away. I think they will make a drastic difference in your selection of a vendor. Look, if you agree or disagree, do me a favor, go down below, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down, give me a comment. I'd love to interact with you. I'd love to engage with you. That way I understand what you're thinking and I can make my content even better moving forward. Apart from that, I hope that you have an amazing day. Thank you for tuning in today. Take care.